Good afternoon to all of you in Mzansi and the rest of you in our motherland, Africa. We also welcome our overseas attendees and the broader drone community. May you live in these interesting times. This is said to be a 16th century Chinese proverb or a curse, depending on how you want to frame it. Yes, we live in interesting times, and it is ironic that this proverb or curse is said to have come from China. Just like this prevailing thing, which we will not give it any more publicity than it deserves. Suffice to say that our nation is rising again, as we will be celebrating not only coming down to level 1 of the state of disaster, but on Thursday, the fellow compatriots will celebrate Heritage Day, Bride Day, or King Shaka Day, whichever way you want to celebrate it. They've also been ordered to take the Jerusalem Dance Challenge. Yes, we need it after 6 months of gloom, but let's do it responsibly and avoid a second wave of this terrible thing. Let us stay with the interesting times, but on a positive note. The waves of innovation that have been sweeping various industries are getting shorter by the day. And the mining industry has not been spared. Some call it the fourth industrial revolution, but we prefer to call it digital transformation, which is the confluence or convergence of 4 main technologies: cloud, Internet of Things, big data, and artificial intelligence. At the heart of this digital transformation is the mining industry. We find various enabling technologies that include, yes, drone technology, 3D modeling, AI, IoT, microgrids, etc. Some of these technologies are solutions looking for a problem or to cause one. Others are being adopted at a rapid rate given their impact in addressing some of the wicked problems facing the mining industry. It is easy for us to make this a webinar, a drone technology webinar, without looking at the fundamental drivers of change in the mining industry. Technology does not drive change, but it enables it. Some of the wicked problems facing the mining industry right now include the following: rising costs, falling productivity, attracting and retaining engineering talent, triple bottom line sustainability, they call people, planet, profit. On the social side, we all know the problem of mining ghost towns. On the economic front, some mines are struggling to stay afloat and become profitable. On the environmental side, yes, Johannesburg, Egoli or Gauteng, place of gold, was built on gold, but we were left with these ugly mine dumps and the problem of acid mine water. Another problem is safety, illegal mining, artisanal mining or small scale mining, whichever what you call it. Along with other technologies, drones have been deployed in the mining industry with an aim of addressing these challenges that are threatening the very existence of this industry that has been the bedrock of our economy from the 19th century and now contributes up to 8% of our GDP. Drone technology has been deployed in areas like stockpile management, surveying for pre and post drilling and blasting, safe hazard identification, aerial inspection, environmental management, and safeguarding of critical infrastructure. My name is Victor Khatebe, and I'm your moderator for this session. I welcome you to the 5th episode of the Decade of the Drone webinar series. I am the founder and CEO of Mzansi Aerospace Technologies. One of our main business lines is a drone accelerator, that helps drone startup businesses to close the traction gap in the very competitive marketplace. This webinar is made possible through the support of Commercial Drones, a UDH group company, and Mzansi Aerospace Technologies. The webinar is part of DroneCon, our annual conference that was meant to take place next month in Durban, but has been moved to September next year for obvious reasons. Whilst this so-called new normal has brought challenges, we are pleased with the fact that in the last 4 episodes, we have been able to reach a cumulative audience of over 1,000 attendees. We also had international speakers that we didn't have to fly them to South Africa. In today's episode, we tackle 2 of the main sectors of our economy, mining and quarrying. Our great lineup of speakers will unpack for you how drone tech is emerging as one of the essential tools of this sector. To enrich and balance this discussion, we not only have industry speakers, but we also have brought in the voice of government and academia. Fortunately for me, today I have an easy job of simply asking the questions, and I will let our awesome speakers do the talking. Yes, you will also have the chance to fire some questions to the panelists. Just a few housekeeping issues. I don't have to point you out the Lucian facilities, but feel free to use the chat line below to post your comments, questions, and also to network privately with any of the speakers or any fellow attendees. What we cannot answer here, we will get back to you with answers within 7 days. And now, in the words of my favorite CNN anchor, Fareed Zakaria, let's get started. Our first speaker is Mr. Christopher Clark, Managing Director and co-founder of Rocket Mine, Africa's premier drone service provider. His goal is to build a young, dynamic, technology-driven company focused on solving real-world problems in the mining industry. Chris's passion are people and technology and how these constructs interlink to create not only sustainable companies, business models, but how they impact the end user and alternative industries. Rocket Mine is a drone service company focused on the large open cast mining and achieved the first operating license later brought out by the Paris-listed Delta Drone Group. He leads a team of 35 talented individuals responsible for truly disrupting the mining industry and how it consumes production data. Rocket Mine is fast becoming the de facto standard for drone services in the mining sector, with global offerings stretching across Africa, Ghana, Namibia, South Africa, as well as Latin America in Mexico. Ladies and gentlemen, without much further ado, please help me welcome Mr. Chris Clark. Over to you, Chris.
Hi there, Victor. Hope you all can see me then to see the Rocket Mine slide. You can see my face?
Yes, we can.
Great. Afternoon, Victor, and thank you very much again, and a very warm welcome to everyone and my fellow panelists as well. This is a really exciting opportunity to really, I guess, kind of have this campfire session with everyone today to I guess, kind of chat about not only just Rocket Mine, but the mining industry in general. You know, it's been a really exhilarating roller coaster of a ride over these past couple of years as Rocket Mine, from when we started over 6-7 years ago, even pre-regulations, to going through the regulations, and even into our expansion into Africa and the continent and globally as well. Because I guess as a really proudly, let's say, even South African business, you know, sometimes we're not given the opportunities to even conquer our own bases, let alone like sort of going to other countries as well. And this is really a great opportunity to be with you all and to focus on the mining industry in particular. And speaking to today, Victor, like as you were saying earlier, is, you know, what are the new technologies? Where do we see the mining space going into? And this is the topic that I'm going to be covering today for everyone. So let's get started. So, you know, always the fascinating thing when we kind of started as a drone company about 6 years ago, you know, it was always about the hardware and the tech and what you look at it, right? And what we kind of very quickly realized when we sort of came wet behind the ears into this particular industry is that we realized very early on to the customers, it wasn't, or the mining customers in general, it wasn't really about the drone. It was always about the picture or the data that you generated at the end of the day. And we realized that we had to come in and sort of build this drone data base that could empower all these other departments, and how they can allow them to make all these other sort of decisions, right? Because at the end of the day, customers don't need the drone, they want the data. And we became really much as we might think of ourselves as a drone company, we really actually kind of position ourselves as a data company, you know, kind of going forward. And how we achieve that is sort of customized and fit for purpose for every single customer, because everyone is different. Even looking in the South African context, in places like Ghana, where we have offices as well, up in Namibia where we do, and many other countries. So it's always fascinating. But the common element is, at the end of the day, when you're looking at the data, what do the customers want to do and generate? You know, I mean, one of the high level things is obviously the volumetrics, and understanding what the production information is that they can get out of the mines. And it's quite nice having those customers and those finite data deliverables. That's exactly what they need. Then it just becomes, how do you get this quicker and more informative? And the way that we kind of look at this is, and what drone technology has done to the mining industry is very much similar to what I kind of put, Victor, I'm sure you all know the good old days of, if you remember the days of GPRS or 2G, there might be quite a lot of young people on here, but Victor, you remember the days of GPRS, Edge, you know, on cell phones? I'm
Yes,
dashing with you, Victor. Do
yes,
you remember? Victor, you're a little bit older than me. So
yes, I
GPRS,
remember,
remember those
I
days?
remember the times of Nokia 1610.
Correct. So, you know, I mean, I kind of grew up in that that 80s. I'm an 80s baby, so I grew up in that era where, at university, when we had Edge and GPRS on our Java Samsung flip phones, you know, we were downloading applications like Mixit, right? And because that's all that the data or the bandwidth could allow at the time, was just a couple of kilobytes of data to communicate, and else the alternative was expensive SMSs. And all of a sudden, in the cell phone industry, what's happened is we all of a sudden went from that GPRS to 2G to 3G and LTE. And I even remember the time when people were saying, why do we need 3G and LTE? I'm very happy with my BlackBerry. It's sending emails, it's sending messages. What do I need faster data? What's 3G going to give me? But all of a sudden, when we got the world of 3G came in, it created this bandwidth capacity to allow for the smartphone to really come in. And all of a sudden, we had the App Store, the App Store and apps. And all of a sudden, people say, well, now we understand why generating a bandwidth capacity. And the very similar way how cell phones and developing technologies in the cell phone network market has grown, that's the same thing what drones have done, for example, in the mining industry. Way back when people were just going out with their GPSs and kind of staking and sort of getting their volume data only once per month. You know, generally on the aerial surveys, again, maybe once per week. But all of a sudden with drone data, you're getting it every single day. Now, in the beginning, very much similar to like 3G, you think, what do I need all this data for? But when you're creating a very frequent set of data coming through very often, you can start building a lot of really cool data applications using software that's already available, like some of these that I'm showing out there at the moment. You can really start populating these software systems with this frequency of data that really empowers the customer to make a lot more faster, quicker decisions. And that's really been our key focus at RocketMine, is about delivering data as quickly and fast and efficiently as cost effectively as possible. And that's really kind of been our sort of our key goal. You know, our bread and butter has always been focused on the survey mapping market, as many other mining guys will go, because that's what the customers want to see. They want to get out of the survey mapping. They want to get the survey data. We've always focused on the fixed wings, is sort of been our choice, just due to the large size of the areas that we cover, and just ensuring the consistency of the data in which we deliver. Because at the end of the day, the customers, again, they only want the picture, they only need the data. They're not worried about the drone itself. Kind of building onto our survey mapping data, we've seen that this growing trend towards not only just generating point clouds, you know, which kind of look like pixels on a screen, but really going towards, you know, this high resolution 3D meshes. And this has allowed from new sensors and high resolution sensors that have come out on drones, has kind of allow us to really build these 3D high resolution meshes that now, not only in a horizontal sense, but on a vertical sense, can now even start picking up tiny little cracks, and modeling those cracks and bringing it to 3D world. So this is obviously not a photo, by the way. This is an actual 3D model that we built as well. And with these models, you can actually then start training, for example, AI detectors to start picking up things like cracks. Now, why is that important is you want to start identifying high wall failures before they actually occur, and start helping customers, again, make those decisions a lot faster. So we almost kind of see this transition of drone data. We've gone from the days of a 720p, 1080p television screen to 4K, 6K, 8K. It's the same way. The camera's only just getting high resolution. The data is just getting, let's say, more highly detailed and a lot more, let's say, intense and a lot more detailed. But then also the processing and the decision making behind that speeds up as well. And again, it's about, how do we make the videos and the data useful? A lot of players in this field are obviously going out and, for example, doing blast monitoring, filming blast, doing the slow motion, doing the reporting, that's great. But how do we bring other technologies like machine learning and AI into those video feeds as well, to sort of start identifying vehicles and people inside the blast radius before the blast goes off? These are the great, cool new technologies which are coming to the forefront as well, in combination with drones. Again, at the end of the day, the customer wants the information. They need the little red block, the warning signs, the robots, the red, green, yellows going off, really coming through. And that's what we see the customers are appreciating as well. And very similar to how you're looking at your video that in the beginning as well, we're seeing now we're going from above the ground now to underground technologies and surveys. So drones becoming very autonomous, very much like, again, this is probably my 80s showing off itself, but for those of you who've watched Prometheus, the movie, being able to send autonomous drones into alien buildings and being able to do 3D modeling live with onboard processing, building those models and feeding that back. No more, we're taking men totally out the picture. In other words, removing them from unsafe spaces and sending drones into the void to be able to do the mapping. We really are just only touching the pinnacle of this new drone tech that's coming. And at the end of the day, it's all about focusing. How do we, while we can create all this hardware, how do we make this data useful and understandable to the customers in the general market? And really, as an industry, that's what we need to be focusing on. Is we can make anything fly. You can a stick. You can create a stick with wings and attach a propeller to it and make it fly. At the end of the day, it's about how do we make that information useful and grow this industry, and really kind of set our place as true leaders, in the market. Because I know we always debate about the regulations and the limitations of those regulations as well, but for us as global providers of drone services across the world, we've actually just seen how incredible the South African work ethic is, our ability to adopt technology a lot faster, even like versus places like the United States and Australia as well. Our ability to communicate and take the problem of the customer and make it useful for them is really one of our key cornerstones. So it's really been a great opportunity, and thank you, Victor.
Chris, thank you so much. And I heard you. My take from your speech is that it's not about the drone, it's about the data that it collects. I want to get back to you when we get into the panel discussion for you to talk to me about diagnostic and predictive analytics within the mining space. Ladies and gentlemen, we move on. Thank you so much, Chris. And our next speaker will move from the industry to government or quasi-government. Our next speaker is Mr. Ruben Meyerovitz. He's a senior project engineer at Mintech, an individual that has been focused on investigating, designing, and implementing technology in the field of mine rehabilitation and shaft closure nationally using unmanned aircraft systems, which we call them the drones, and other traditional methods. Ruben works for Mintech, a state-owned enterprise, and have been involved in the mining industry and technology for over 35 years. Having worked in various levels of projects related to surveying, designing, and implementation, there were various lessons learned and challenges faced due to demanding environments that required special technology methods to ensure success. Ruben is passionate about technologies like UAVs. He has been flying radio control aircraft since he was 6 years old and have used all his experience to evolve into the drone technology and equipment for project and related equipment. When Ruben joined the rehabilitation industry, he was faced with a lot of traditional mindsets and drones were only accepted at a very later stage as acceptable and valuable to assist projects with designing and execution and construction. And Ruben, over to you, and talk to us about some of the challenges facing the mining industry that you're going to talk about. Over to you, Ruben.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. I think this is quite an honor to be on this conference, and I think I'm going to try and cover things as quick and efficient as I can. I've got quite a mouthful, but I try to make a presentation as short as possible, but then obviously we can look at the panel and have some discussions afterwards. Let me get my screen up and going. Right, let's see, let's go for this. Right, okay. I'm just going to share some of the droning and mining and our perspectives of what we've seen, you know, in the run of what we've been doing in the last 12, 13 years. I got involved with the Derelict and Ownerless Mines program about 12.5 years ago, which was rehabilitation of asbestos mines and so, but then it evolved quite further as time went. Now, Mintech's mandate is, you know, primarily resources and beneficiation, but we developed into this rehabilitation, shaft closure and illegal mining over the time as it came, and we had quite a few things that we had to look at. One of which was the impact areas in the mining locations and how drone technology affects everything. One of the main things in the mining industry is exploration and cost. Exploration has always been a very, very expensive commodity. And fortunately and unfortunately, what happened, the first thing that happens when economy starts pinching is exploration gets cut. Where I think with droning technology, the whole field of exploration has changed. Now, my opinion is also that droning as a type of AI, for me, it's aerial intelligence, the word not artificial intelligence, aerial intelligence, the first person view of what you're seeing. And that view basically helps tremendously. And the way this happened is in the past that I could bring videos back, I could bring a very different perspective back to senior management and this type of thing to look at what are we looking at really and at what perspective are we looking at it. Droning data and time is a very important thing in the mining industry. As Renee was saying, it's a very, very important thing, or Chris, was that droning data is what it's all about, and timing. And the data is basically conclusive in what you're going to do in your mining operation and how it's going to impact on everything. Location investigation, design and construction, very, very important because all mines are located in areas. You have to investigate and then you design and construct. And obviously droning technology data will give us planning. Planning is how you're using that data to put it into. Now we also look at mineral security. I think mineral security is one of those things. You're looking at a finite source, and a finite source is a ore or a mineral that you're mining, but it's finite. Finite means it's going to run out at some point. And volumes is very important. So droning technology has made it very, very important and very easy to actually gather volumes and then put that into your planning. Then you also have to evaluate and grade. In other words, what grade of mineral do you have? And the percentage of what your volumes and planning is going to do and what it will give you, and time and cost obviously is a given. I'm going through this quite quickly. We can always cover this afterwards again with questions. Then security is your location and production. Is your mineral security is what are you locating, where are you locating, what evaluation and grade are you doing, and what is your production going to be. And then you're looking at risk. Risk is obviously the risk of getting to the mineral. And we were looking just now, you've got underground operations, you've got open cast operations. There are varieties of operations and you have to look at the risks. And we believe that droning technology can actually make that easier to assess your risks. Then we have a very, very difficult thing that we are dealing with, but you know what, it's something we all know about, is the illegal mining. Shafts and closures in Gauteng for now. National, we do have the problem, but I think predominantly in the Gauteng area. Now, we do holing site investigations where we actually have to go out and see where these holings or these shafts, open shafts, derelict and ownerless shafts are. And holing site investigations. Visibility. how visible, and all these illegal mining guys, how visible are they? Where are the holes? How visible are they? Then we have migration of operations. These illegal miners are all busy with mining operations in various places. But where we close one, they migrate to another place. Now you've got to monitor and see where these guys are. Their operations are well organized. They are working in a lot of syndication. They've got networks and they've got infrastructures. And we found that by using droning technology and this type of thing, we can actually see out of a very different perspective how these things are working and where they're operational and all that. Threat and protection, we have to look at who and what is going to happen and how we are going to be threatened going into these areas. The illegal mining guys are definitely very protective around their operations, and they are going to feel threat. And when we go into as protection monitoring, how do you monitor these guys? How do you actually look at where the mines are, what's happening, and the closures that we've done? How do you monitor that? Then the network of illegals. There's a huge networks. The guys have got amazing networks out there where they've already established all kinds of markets and guys that are buying and all this type of thing. What we find also on these holding sites is that the terrain is quite difficult in some cases. The terrain is very rough. It's very difficult to operate in those areas, to go in there and to see what's going on. Then there's also another level to this, is the prosecution of illegals. Now you have to gather data, you have to look at for information, you have to look at what's going on, because if you want to prosecute, you need to identify, which is the next one. Because without identification, you don't know who's doing the operation, who's the criminal, who's the guy that needs to be prosecuted. But now you must prosecute him with what? With quantities. You have to look at what is being quantifying, what is being taken out of the ground, and then you need to monitor whether you've actually closed the shaft successfully and are they going to go back and tamper. And then security implementation is we do a lot of pre-surveillance where we actually take some of the information that we get from either drones and also ground-based operations, and then we put it into how we're going to implement security to get into these sites. Mine rehabilitation. Now, in mine rehabilitation, we've been working with remote sites. We've been working with local sites. We've exhausted most of the small sites. Now we're in big sites. Now, one of the biggest challenges we have is access to these sites, because many of these sites are already vegetative and they've been overgrown, and they've already been historically lying there for 20 or 30 or 40 years. And these areas are very, very difficult to reach. So droning technology has helped in many ways where we can actually start investigating access, how to get to these sites. Topography, very challenging, because we go into areas which are very high in the mountains, and we look also at communities. Now, out of the aerial view, we can find that there are a lot of communities, and how are they affected by these footprints of these mines? Now, the footprint of the mine is where the dump and the contaminated areas are actually footprinted, which gives you the idea of how wide the effect and the impacts are on communities. The data also gives us volumes, which means we need to look at how many and what volume do we have to rehabilitate, what are we going to work with for scoping. And then there's slopes and stability. Slopes, some of these areas are in incredibly elevated places where the slopes are in excess of 60 degrees, which means you have to work out now a very special plan to get to these specific areas. So we found that quite challenging, and a lot of your costing element is built into how to get to these areas to actually rehabilitate and plan. And through a lot of technologies for droning and the data and information like that, we could actually optimize a lot of that. Minerals and classification, what I'm saying there is the drones have the ability to actually, through either photogrammetry or sampling and that type of thing, to look at what mineral is where and what is it classified. Is it a gold ore? Is it a asbestos ore? What is it? That's still a work in process. We are currently looking at some of the technologies and stuff, how from photogrammetry to classify, so we can know what type of asbestos is where. Locations, we're all in different locations, very remote, very in elevated places. I'll show you some brief photos afterwards where you'll get an idea of what we're looking at. And then off the data that we get from the mine rehabilitation and planning, droning data and all this type of thing, we look at the design that we need to implement to make these sites stable and to get them back to. Rehabilitation's idea is to take it back to as natural as you got it before the mining operation started. Construction monitoring, while we're busy constructing and building and shaping the dumps and all this type of thing, is to see what volumes we are moving, what type of material are we actually excavating at the time, how far are we with the design, and also to measure that to quantity surveying to see what are we going to pay at what time to contractors and that's we busy constructing these sites. Then modeling and presentation, what we tend to do is we also model before so that we look at what are the possibilities, where are we going with these designs, how are we going to rehabilitate and how are we planning around it. Because some of these sites are very remote and also access is quite a problem. And then to stay sustainable. Now, sustainable is obviously going to do a lot to do with post-closure monitoring. Once it's been done, how sustainable are we, and to make sure our designs are sustainable in rehabilitation and planning. Video assessments, a video, a picture, and a video says much more than any words can ever say. So in many cases where we were looking for mines, we would fly the drones and all this type of thing. We'll find the mine physically through seeing actually where it's located by visual and what you can see on visual assessment. Risk assessments, how dangerous are these sites, what's around them, all this type of thing. Droning has been incredibly valuable in doing that because before we actually started putting technology in place, we used to physically climb these mountains, go out there with a team to find these mines and all that, and we've reduced the risks through actually using droning technology. Now, we also get now to the challenges we're doing now. Now, we found that there's also a few challenges. Now, the technology guys will give us all the answers on this. But one of the challenges we do face with droning and this type of thing is the elevations that we're flying at and the topographical locations. Because we work at very, very high sites sometimes, some of them sometimes 1,100 meters up. And the topographical locations, steep slopes, mountains, valley areas, lots of vegetation, that type of thing. And then naturally, 99% of these places have no connectivity. And there is radio interference and there's all kinds of things that happens out there. That means that drones either have to go very high or fixed wing, or they are limited to specific things. Battery life, because of some of the area sizes that we have, battery technology has developed, but some of the drones are limited to 18 minutes, maybe some of them 17 minutes, 16 minutes, 12 minutes. There are drones out there that do much, much wider battery lives. And obviously, it gives much better span in areas. Data quality. Data quality is very related to how long the drone stays up there and how much data is collecting and obviously the quality of the drone. Ground control points. Now, all surveyor knows exactly what ground control points is. Now, how do you place ground control points in a terrain that is so steep and elevated that it will take you a week just to place your ground control points? It is a challenge. It is a challenge. So I do know that there is technologies out there that doesn't need ground control points, but for accuracy and things, it is a challenge. So I'm putting a lot of questions out there today to the group so that obviously we can discuss these things and see which way we go. Terrain, very rough. There's rough terrain out there. Bush. I mean, I'm now above the 50s, and I promise you, I've climbed these mountains and to go and look for mines, and everything is grown, overgrown, and all the type of things. So penetration is very important. Processing time, we all know processing time needs higher technologies, computers, that type of thing. It takes time to turn the data around. So sometimes for a question that you need now, and an answer, you'll probably only get the result maybe in a day or two later, which might be too late. Okay. Weather. We found that there's a lot of weather issues out there. When the wind's blowing, the drone can't fly. If it's too strong, it can't fly. So it's raining, it can't fly. And so there is some limitations with droning that we have to fall back on more older technologies, which obviously is still the ones that you can actually still do in weather, which is rough. The droning, unfortunately, needs fair weather. It needs good weather. It needs at least the conditions to fly the drones. Software platforms, we find that a lot of the software platform people are putting a lot of proprietary rights into these platforms. And if you've got special requests and all this type of thing, they're not always expandable to specific questions, of which one is classification. Not many of the platforms can do the specific classification, which I believe will still have a lot of work to be done in the next, I'll say, 5 to 10 years. Then we have a public perception. People are afraid of drones. They don't understand drones. We work a lot in the community sectors and all this type of thing. Yes, they love it when this thing flies around, but they're all very afraid of this, and they're not sure, you know, what this thing is. It's like a bee flying over them. And we do find that we have to approach it very carefully with some of the public of how they actually perceive and accept drones in their areas, because we work in very remote areas. Now, there's some pictures. This is illegal mining. Now, these are in some of the areas, which is now obviously in the Gauteng area. And you can see these guys are busy. They are really busy. And yes, there are very real threats, you know, out there when we are wanting to close these shafts. So obviously we need all the technologies we can get to plan to know how we approach these things. And I'm not going to reveal locations, but these are all some of the illegal mining pictures. Then there's much bigger setups. This is a mine. Massive, 200 hectares area that's been mined. It's an illegal mine, and at a much larger scale. So yes, and this is, yes, a drone photo that's actually been taken of that specific area. Then to just give an idea of some of the rehab locations, this one is in the Limpopo Mafef area. Look at the mountains we need to walk on. Look at the mountains we need to go. Look at the slopes we need to go. Look at the areas where the clusters are, which is the mining dumps. So we are very challenged in some of our areas. And yes, drone technology has worked, and it's helped us tremendously, but there are still some limitations in some of the technologies, which I'm sure we will be able to solve in the future. Then on the right-hand top, you'll see one of the ones that's already a mine that's been rehabilitated successfully, and it's almost like back to nature. And then one on the bottom is one that we did in the Northern Cape, which has got a bit of more technology built in, like gabion structures and you know, backfill structures and top rock-clad cover and that type of thing. And so this is the type of things that we sometimes work with. But now when it gets to drone technology, I think we all do this. We all look at the previous and the old technologies, and we tend to fall back into old technology. Now, are we not all sticking our heads in the ground sometimes when it gets to technology, and we're not appreciating what technology can do for us? And I think it's time for us, especially in South Africa, to start opening our perceptions to understand that technology has come to assist us, not to work against us. So I'm thanking the panel for allowing me for this presentation, and we'll deal with questions and things afterwards. Thank you so much for everybody.
Thank you so much, Ruben. Rest assured, we're not burying our heads in the sand, and we are either going to adapt or shape the future, but we're certainly not going to reserve our right to play. Ladies and gentlemen, we move on, and our next speaker is a young man by the name of Rene Peter Massoon. He's a sales and innovation and new business development lead at UDH Group. He was born and raised in Ekurhuleni, has a background in aviation. He's a commercial pilot license holder with Boeing 737 type rating. Rene is passionate about manned aviation, but during the past few years, this shifted to the unmanned industry. An outspoken ambassador of the fourth industrial revolution, particularly the segment involving drone technology and its benefits and how it forms part of the disruptive technology advancement. He's currently a commercial sales manager which involves drone solutions, innovation, operational support, disruptive technologies, business development, client relations, research and development. An expert in his field covering all facets relating to commercial drone operations. Rene, I'd like you to talk about the technology. Chris spoke largely about data acquisition and collecting that data, but you're going to talk to us about how drones collect the data. Talk to us about the technology behind this amazing disruption. Over to you, Rene.
Thank you very much, Victor. Just do a sound check for me. Testing 1, 2.
You are great. Good to go.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Program Director. Thank you to my colleagues for their wonderful presentations. I think there'll be a few light debates and questions and answers between ourselves in the near future. On that note, good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Renee Peter. You can call me Renee. I am the Sales and Business Development Manager at a company called Commercial Drones. We are one of a handful of DJI enterprise range distributors on the continent, a service and repair center and product training facilitator. We'll also offer, on top of the drone hardware itself, the various components and accessories in terms of specialized payloads and software that go along with the drone platforms. In conjunction with this, we also, with one of our sister companies, which is a registered civil aviation authority, aviation training organization, we also offer the remote pilot license course for your multi-rotor and fixed wing, as well as beyond visual line of sight certification and night rating, along with other short courses. Now, my presentation will encompass an overview of specific drone products and solutions relevant to the topic at hand, of course, mining and quarrying. The conversation around industrial application of drones is mostly around the philosophy of the integration of 4R systems, in particular drone systems, and also the economics that the technology has an impact on. So with a slight deviation from the perspective of my colleagues, I will be focusing on particular drone platforms, as I think it's relevant to know what's in the market. And of course, what the technology has been able to achieve thus far and what it is currently in process of addressing when it comes to industrial challenges. On that note, allow me to introduce you to the DJI Phantom 4 RTK, which is situated here behind me on the desk. Immediately noticeable, of course, would be an RTK module on top here, along with its controller and built-in screen. It would be more familiar or familiar to most, that is, due to the fact that it is built on the DJI Phantom 4 consumer platform. The RTK version, however, is designed for industrial applications. While I share my screen, if you could just hang on for me. Is everyone with me? The Phantom 4 RTK, which is one of the two systems that I'll be covering on, that you see on your screen. The drone is designed, as mentioned, for particular industrial applications, especially when it comes to mapping, surveying, and related applications. Some of the features that I am going to highlight, I will not get too technical for the sake of time, is addressing some of the problems that Ruben had mentioned, such as data quality. As you can see there, it does offer with the RTK system increase in horizontal and vertical accuracy, as well as utilizing various components such as the RTK module, as you saw on the drone itself, a 1-inch CMOS sensor with a 12 megapixel time sync, which is utilized for relaying data collected from the various components of the system in real time. It utilizes a GS RTK app, which is mainly aimed at autonomy, reducing the amount of pilot error in a mission, utilizing the DJI OcuSync system for transmission, as well as, of course, the much needed DRTK2 mobile station, which is a component that you place on the ground that works in conjunction with the drone and satellite systems to increase that accuracy, making up the largest system rather than just the vehicle. As mentioned before, the RTK module, which is integrated directly into the drone, increases your positioning accuracy and, of course, your metadata. This, of course, can be stored on a DJI cloud for post-processing, of course, aiding in efficiency and, I would say, convenience for processing of that data that Chris was referring to earlier on. The precise imaging system, of course, comes from the fixed camera that is on the drone, the 20 megapixel 1-inch CMOS sensor that I mentioned earlier. Interestingly enough, the technology has evolved on this unit in that a GSD at ground sampling distance will give you 2.74 centimeters in a single pixel, which is quite phenomenal for a drone of this size and its capabilities. As mentioned earlier, for ease of pilot use and more autonomy, you have your purpose-built flight planning application that is preloaded onto your controller for ease of mission planning. Of course, reducing the amount of manual control that one might have to input. From your pilot's perspective, of course, you are able to install a variety of third-party applications that are relevant to the industry, also addressing your data, various data collection and real-time analysis. When used with a software processing system called DJI Terra, of course, this enhances the data once again that one would collect from the drone, and hopefully reducing downtime and complexity when it comes to processing the data. As I said, that was just I was just giving a brief overview of the specific technology. As you can see there, max flight time, 30 minutes. Now, Ruben had mentioned earlier, of course, these are one of the challenges that are faced with unmanned aerial vehicles. Of course, when it comes to electric propulsion, they do rely on lithium ion or lithium polymer technology, but there is ongoing research and development to increase the lifespan and, of course, the endurance of these various technologies. I will be sharing a second screen if you would just give me a moment. And on this secondary presentation is just a brief overview once again of a product that I introduced earlier on in the year, the new DJI Matrice 300 RTK. Of course, immediately noticeable, a much larger system as compared to the Phantom 4 RTK, and of course has more features that are built in for various applications that can be utilized for the same applications as your Phantom 4 RTK. Such as mapping and surveying, but also for day and nighttime surveillance, of course, addressing that illegal mining and illegal activity on your various sites. Another improvement of this, because it is quite a touchy subject when it comes to endurance, is the now maximum 55-minute flight time that a drone of its kind offers. We are able to take this drone to a maximum of 8 kilometers in our area of the world. Also, you have a different configuration that you are able to utilize on the drone in terms of loading various payloads or cameras on the drone simultaneously, which you can utilize to collect different data in terms of thermal, RGB, visible light, and multispectral for vegetation analysis. Just a few extra features on this platform are something called the smart pin and track, whereby you are able to utilize the artificial intelligence, or as Ruben referred to as the aerial intelligence of a drone or unmanned aerial system. Increasing to the autonomy, you're able to smart track a moving target or a moving object. Perhaps this might be relevant when monitoring your operational teams on your sites, or pinpointing particular areas of interest that you would like to get greater integrity in terms of data on. Of course, for pilot usage or increasing safety and efficiency, there's more information displayed on your smart controller with the built-in screen. Once again, addressing some of the earlier traditional challenges of over complexity when it comes to operations of drones. This particular model has a lot of highly intelligent, highly autonomous functions that, of course, give you the ability to focus rather on your data acquisition as opposed to flying your drone, which, as mentioned a few times, is just but the tool to acquire your data. Released along with this drone is the ZenMuse H20 camera series. We'll be highlighting these just briefly. The ZenMuse H20T, which stands for thermal, gives you a 20 megapixel sensor with a 23-time optical zoom, a 12 megapixel wide camera. These are, of course, essential features for inspections and surveying, mapping, and of course, a thermal camera for when you would like to do thermal analysis of an area, or of course, security and surveillance. There are various compatible payloads with the system as well for various functions. So I shall stop sharing the screen. Based off of some of the technology in these platforms that are dedicated to the topic industry at hand, I think, in my opinion, the drone is not just simply a flying machine with a camera attached to it that can take nice pictures, but I think there are scientific processes that it facilitates as a system and give, of course, readable data, deliverables that can be actioned accordingly with the relevant software. And Therefore, in such a case, or in our context, we do refer to this as an unmanned aerial system as opposed to just a drone. I trust this has been an informative one when it comes to product specifics. If you have any more questions regarding these particular products or other drone products that you might have an interest in, we also offer vertical takeoff and landing fixed wing drones with similar applications with larger range and endurance facilitation. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you to the audience, and over to you, Victor.
Renee, thank you so much. And we'll get back to you. One question that I have for you, just keep in mind, is I'm seeing a whole lot of manned aviation pilots who are getting into this industry in a serious way. I mean, you yourself having been, a 737 rating, it's quite interesting to come to this fledgling industry. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from the industry, you've heard from government. Now let's go to academia. I'll bring you our next speaker, Prof. Grobler. He's an associate professor of head of Department of Mining Engineering and Mining Surveying at the University of Johannesburg. He obtained a government certificate of competency in mine surveying in 1994 and master's degree in mineral resource throughout management in 2004. Prof. Grobler gained 18 years industry experience as a responsible mine surveyor on gold and nickel and chrome mining projects before joining the UJ in 2007. In 2015, he completed a PhD at the University of Witwatersrand. Hendrik's industrial experience and research fields includes the alignment and underground surveying networks using gyroscopic methods, laser scanning, LiDAR, monitoring of geological hazards, including subsidence monitoring, mine planning, or reserve valuation or reconciliation. He has produced 13 peer-reviewed journal papers and 9 peer-reviewed conference proceedings. His current research includes application of extended reality in the education of mining engineers. Prof, before you speak, I wanted to bring, when I went to Prof. Marwala and I said, look, I'm looking for a speaker because of his passion for fourth industrial revolution. He referred me to Prof. Mashawa, and Prof. Mashawa said, if this is about mining and surveying, there's only one person who can speak on this, and that is you, Prof. Over to you. Just introduce yourself and tell us what work you do in your industry and where you see this technology in the bigger scheme of things of the 4IR. We know UJ is big on the space, but just tell us where drones could be are doing in this industry of mining and surveying. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you for those kind words, Victor. Always when I hear that, I wonder who they're talking about, and then I realize it's me. So thank you very much, and thank you to the previous speakers. The guys really brought some really interesting comments to the table. So Industry 4 is obviously what we're heading towards and what we're in at the moment. I loved your comment right in the beginning about solutions looking for problems, you know. And that's normally what we tend to find in the mining industry. Look, the mining industry is very conservative. And before I go on, Victor, I just need to find out how much time have we got left? You said an hour. So can I limit this to a short 5 minutes, or how would you want this?
Okay, just go 3 to 4 minutes. We're still going to come back.
Okay, that's it, fine. Perfect.
Yourself.
So as far as Industry 4 is concerned, you know, that's what you find a lot. People will try and sell you something without really knowing, you know, they've got a solution, but they don't know where to apply it. Where drones might have been seen that way 10 years ago, it's definitely not the case. And all of the speakers spoke to that, and that is the fact that you're visualizing something in a first-person view almost, and that's where drones come to its full. That sort of human-machine interface where a drone can provide you with a picture that no amount of surveying or mapping or software 3D modeling can duplicate. And I think that's the biggest issue. As far as Industry 4 is concerned, of course, artificial intelligence, we've spoken a little bit about it, and I'm really happy to see from the last what Renee presented, the fact that GPS is now integrated into some systems. as well as the fact that what Chris was showing from Rocket Mine, that you can actually see geology. And that's the areas where we're researching, is to see how we can, from LiDAR or photogrammetry, start automatically mapping geological hazards, automatically mapping geology, and then also start locating and finding. Underground, it's obviously a big challenge. I find that is my field of expertise. It's always wonderful to see these drones flying around and finding its own way in a tunnel. But I think it's still early days, and it's going to take a lot of research to actually get a drone that's completely autonomous in that respect. But definitely, and I loved what Ruben was saying about walking on the terrain. If you haven't had to hunt for a shaft in the bushveld and hung in a thorn tree somewhere along the line, you won't appreciate what the drones are doing to the surveying industry. There's some claims of saving 90% of cost per hour for surveyors. Maybe that's a little bit over the top, but definitely just the amount of labor intensive walking, looking for stuff and finding things that you are absolutely pushing out of the ways, or using a drone is really important. As far as with our students, obviously we're still focusing on fundamentals, and that is a worrying aspect to drones. There are a lot of operators that do not have surveying or photogrammetry fundamentals. And depending on the application, once again, you know, if you just want to locate a vehicle or a shaft or something within a couple of meters or even half a meter, that's great. But if you want to go to surveying grade accuracy, where you need to map and start drawing plans and doing volumetrics, that's a completely different kettle of fish. But I do think that that's what a drone brings to the party. The fact that a drone can do multispectral imagery, the photograph captures everything. So that's a snapshot at that stage. So you can get topography from that, you can get vegetation growth from that, you can get erosion, subsidence, safety. So there's multiple uses to one data set. And I do think that that is what makes, brings it into Industry 4. The data itself becomes the resource. That data can be sold on to multiple users for different reasons. And it becomes a huge asset to whoever's capturing that data. Also, if you've been on the ground and you've been chased by an irate farmer because you climbed over his fence, or even worse, you get chased by the irate farmer's bull or dogs, you would understand what a drone brings to the party. If you don't have to negotiate that side of things because you can actually remotely survey, that's of course the ideal. And that's where it brings into its own in a mining environment, where mine safety is of the utmost importance. And that sometimes in the past meant that you had to put a surveyor into a difficult situation, purely because that's the only way of acquiring data. But if you can send a drone in there, of course, that opens up a whole spectrum of data. So that's basically all I want to say about it. Maybe just on the last thing, and it's something we spoke about right in the beginning, is unfortunately, I have to say that if I compare legislation and compliance issues with the rest of Africa, for instance, I do think South Africa is behind the curve. And I'm giving it over to you again, Victor, if I can just find my mute button.
Thank you, Prof. And thank you so much for your great input. That last point, I'm glad, because we've got an advocate who advocates for our drone industry right within the regulator, Mr. Lobang Tabantu, who is listening. And yeah, but today we're going to talk more about matters relating to mining. Ladies and gentlemen, our last speaker, we're now in the last 30 minutes of our webinar. Our last speaker is a young man, Thabo Mkhawane. He's the managing director of Advanced Aerial, a company that specializes in providing modern solutions to traditional industrial level challenges: surveying, mapping, blasting, monitoring, industrial inspection, security, and surveillance, all form part of the core service offering. He loves the fact that Advanced Aerial can deliver real-time data from the field straight to the office in a matter of minutes. This has proven to assist business people in that they are able to have accurate data whereby informed decisions can be made faster than ever before. Thabo is qualified in BTech Engineering Survey and is registered with the South African Geometric Council for professional and technical surveyors. He's also studying towards his master's degree in town planning. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you the young man, young, gifted, and black, Thabo Mokgawana. Please tell us about your work. You mentioned the other day that obviously, much as the mines have got their own struggles, but you guys as drone pilots trying to do your work there are certain struggles that you guys faced in the time and the tight deadlines from the mining industry and the pressures that you guys go through. Over to you, Thabo.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vic, and good afternoon to the colleagues. It's grateful for the opportunity to engage with you guys. I think for the past 5 years, as we've been in the industry, in the total mining solutions,
Thabo,
the challenges.
Thabo, Prof is the one who didn't want us to see his face, but you are not exempted. We want to see your face. Carry on, Thabo. Just switch on your video.
The host has stopped it, Vic.
Oh, all right. So it's not you. Carry on talking.
Yes, so since the 5 years of in operation in various mines within the Mpumalanga regions, your Northern Cape, I think with our clients we go back to the trust equation, which is your credibility, reliability, intimacy over self-interest. I mean, credibility, the pilots can be licensed to do the job. I can have all the ratings to do the job and the necessary training. And on the reliability, we can be on site, on time. We can produce data based on the scope of work. And intimacy, I mean, it also engage with how we engage with our clients on a relationship level. Over self-interest, I mean, the mine also is looking at getting severe products on time, and also as pilots also adhering to the compliance. I mean, the biggest challenges that we've been facing, I mean, it's to merge the three. I'll say we call ourselves an aviation company because I mean we've been engaging to put the mining compliance first. The aviation compliance, and also push production, which has been various challenge. As certain stakeholders from mine, they're looking at productivity. You have to adhere with the mine compliance, get the legalities, the right rating to actually access the mine to actually produce the product. And also we're looking at the aviation. I mean, weather plays a part, taking off and landing areas, takeoff applied, there's the regulations. So in the past 5 years, I mean, not to take time, we've actually started a program where we engage workshops with the clients, where we allow them to train them on the changes in the regulations, to also train them and advise them on the capabilities of the aircraft, more than just the production, but the clients also need the capabilities of the aircrafts. What are the challenges we're facing is when we putting the three together, of the compliance side and the production. We've also started co-piloting programs within the people within the site in the mine industry, where we let them engage with us on the production fields, and also engaging them on the changes of equipment and technology. And that workshop has started to benefit us as an industry, that we involve our clients in what's the changes and the challenges we're facing the industry, the capabilities of the technology, so that we can able to view one goal with it, Victor. Over to you, Victor.
Can I just now ask all my panelists everyone wants to see you in the last half an hour. We're just going to fire some quick questions to you guys. I'm going to go back to our first speaker, and thank you very much. And also, before I go there, I just want to recognize or acknowledge the presence of Mr. Lobang Tabansu from the CAA. And we're glad to have you here. We always call the CAA the father of the bride. They gave birth to this industry back in 2015. And Mr. Simon Zwane from ATNS, we have an announcement right at the end of this panel, and if you can stay with us, and we're thankful for that. And I see Mr. Lisito from TITA, the people who are funding the training of drone pilots in this country, and we're grateful to have you guys all here. Chris, I'm going to go back to you. We spoke about data, and we know that operating in an uncertain environment, you want to know the future. And I know you always talk about data. If we just look at how data diagnostic analytics or probably predictive analytics can help us predict things long before they happen. Could be unsafe mine environment, or it could be predicting what's going to happen in the future in terms of the production. How is data changing the way mines are being managed at this point in time? Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Victor. So I think the interesting thing is, well, there's a famous saying, and probably Victor, you'll correct me, if you can't measure it, you can't find out what's wrong with it. Maybe Ruben, maybe you know the correct terminology, right? But if you can't measure it, you can't fix it. I think that's the right one. And I think that's exactly what it is, right? It's if you've got to consistently be measuring it, and the more frequent you can measure it, let's say the quicker you can pick up the spikes, because you just don't want to have these very highs and lows, right? So at its baseline, measurement is the key. Once you're collecting all of this data consistently over time, it's about building the models. How do you start identifying, it's a statistical sort of analysis, right? How do we start finding the commonalities and building those correlation curves as well, and saying to our customers, this is where it's going. This is what the implications are going to be. These are the risks. These are the outliers, and this is how we need to minimize any kind of risks and impacts as well. So it is a very long journey, and we're still at the, let's say, we're not at the beginning, we're kind of in the middle. We're very lucky in a South African industry context that the mining industry is very used to working with large volumes of data in software, right, in comparison to agriculture, which guys are still writing in notebooks at this moment, and so that's really great, but it's now about taking that and how to make it useful and present it on a dashboard in a way that people understand. I referred to earlier about kind of giving that robot analogy, the red, yellow, green, because as you and I, Victor, like we just have so much information kind of swamping us all the time. Sometimes we just need that clarity to come through, and it's about building those templates, that model in a way that people understand and go, it's a red robot. We need to make a critical decision right now, and how to react to that.
Thank you, Chris. Ruben, I'm going to get back to you. You're very passionate about the issue of illegal mining, saying that it's threatening the very existence of our industry. And it's also been linked to some serious accidents. We've seen some standoffs between illegal miners and the law enforcement authorities. How serious is this problem, and how can drone technology be used, particularly because government is responsible for mine inspection or accident investigations? Talk to us about those issues, and then on the other side, talk to us about the use of drone technology.
Yes, Victor. I think first and foremost of all, I just want to thank the Director of Mining Closure, Mr. Ruben Masenya from the DMRE. I see he's also watching us. So he's the big boss on our side. Now, what I want to say is, you see, I think the big challenges we're facing is that we don't understand that the illegal mining operations is having a direct economical impact on the whole of the mining industry. As much as we've had impacts in the diamond industry, in the illegal smuggling of diamonds and things like that, I don't think we realize sometimes how important to the economy it is that the illegal mining operations do actually get addressed in a constructive manner. Because what's happening is that capital and that development of what they're mining and that type of thing is not getting captured into the South African economy because of the illegal nature of that. So the threats and what we have is, when you do start looking at these operations, these guys are very organized. They are in big syndicates and that type of thing. And you have to consider that you are at threat and your life is in danger when you approach these guys, because they are making a living out of this, whether illegal or legal. And you are going to have to approach the mining closures in such a way that you have to consider all the risks and the threat that is going together with this. So your very first approach is on a non-confrontational basis is to visit the ones that do look like they are less volatile. But when you get to the volatile ones, obviously your life is in danger. So you have to use alternative technologies, which is droning, to start looking at where the operations are located and how these guys are operational, all that, before you even start looking at considering how to close these mines. So it is definitely impacting the mining industry negatively in the way that it's creating a precedent, and it's also creating channels of offset. And what it also does is, believe it or not, it's also infiltrating into the current mining operations, in the sense that these guys are actually infiltrating there as well. So you have to deal with illegal mining, but you've got to be very careful how you do this, because I mean, it's taken a while. You know, so we've only been mandated since last year, November, December. Up until then, it's been another department dealing with this. So we are definitely now implementing higher technologies and all this. And then what you have to do is, once you've now actually started closing these mines, there are holes and things where these guys are getting into the mining operations and things, you must also realize they're going to go somewhere else. So
Okay.
now you have to now start monitoring these guys, and there you have to now go higher technologies, which is satellite and so forth, which I'm not going to elaborate too much on, where you actually have to get all your local SAPS and all these guys need to get involved, because there's a lot of collaboration that needs to take place in these operations and all this type of thing, and it's very broad platform. But your initial data collection is incredibly important, because your data collection means you're actually looking at what is the migration and what's the patterns and how to deal with these patterns. So we've been focusing a lot on that, and we've recently started compiling that all together, which I believe will bring a system in the future which will help with a lot of things, and we'll be able to maybe deal with some of these issues. But it's all in flux. It's all in flux. And what happens is, with illegal mining operations, is the guys go where the digging is the best. So you must also understand is that they are always in the move. They're always on the move. So you don't have a fixed pattern. Now, droning technology, as well as technologies that are mobile, can then bring data and information in on a live basis, on a real-time basis, which actually helps different operations and the collaboration between the different departments. I hope I answered enough on the specific component. It can go wide. I can talk all day about this, but I'm trying to just get it into a very compact idea.
Yeah. No, thanks very much, Ruben. Prof, I'm going to get to you now on the issue of skills and also just the body of knowledge as far as this industry is concerned. The Mineral Council is decrying the brain drain in the mining industry. They're saying the engineers that are coming into the industry are less than those that are leaving the industry. How serious is this problem on the one hand? But also, can you also talk to us about research? I mean, do we have enough research as far as this industry is concerned? Over to you, Prof.
Victor, I think the thing with IR4 and new technology, in a sense, and I might be shot for this, but the brain drain is not a big issue. We spoke when we started jokingly about, what was it, Christopher, GPR and pre-5G and 3G cell phones. I grew up pre-cell phone. So, you know, it took me probably about a year to start learning my Apple. And every time I get an upgrade, it takes me another year to learn. Where our young generation, and I'm saying anything from probably 8 years old to 25, you give them a cell phone and within a day they're up and running, right? Same with a drone. I did my drone pilot's license 2 years ago, and I suffered. I'm not PlayStation generation. For me to work with a PlayStation controller and a joystick versus, you know, hands on a steering wheel in a car, that fine motor skills doesn't exist. So brain drain for development, perhaps, but I do feel that our young and up and coming generation has a far better capability of accepting changes and actually dealing with it and jumping on opportunity. And if you look at the screen here, and sorry, Victor, I'm going to pick on you and Ruben and myself, the rest of the guys are all young. And I think if you have to take a age sample of the attendees, you'll probably find the same sort of thing. It's the younger generation that's pushing us. So as far as the brain drain is concerned, I'm not so sure if it's got an impact. If you're willing and you're adaptable, and that's the thing of Industry 4. That's one of the key components of Industry 4 is that cross skills, so cross-functional skills and adaptability. And who has that? It's the young guys. Okay, so I don't think that there's a major problem in it. Then as far as research is concerned, yes. You see, because that's now where the older toppies like myself and whatever that seems to be in the academic environment and trying to do research and writing papers. But we need young guys to actually come through with the interest in doing a honors or a master's, and we're developing them. But unfortunately, most of those guys are commercially inclined. They're making a living. And to try and get that research going is sometimes a challenge. And it's really sad because a lot of things can't be shared because it's corporate knowledge or IP. And B, the second thing is that especially if it's with a large company, and I'm not going to mention any large mining companies' names, you can put your own mining company in there as you select, they won't share their information. And that I find really sad. So if you don't, because I see it as a commercial enterprise, and that's unfortunately something we need to overcome. And it's something that I don't see myself as an activist, but I'm known about it completely every day. I see people from industry. You're doing things every day that we are still learning at university. And once again, things have changed around. It's industry that's actually doing the applied research rather than academia, because things are just going too fast. You know, by the time content comes into a theoretical curriculum and pedagogy of teaching a new bachelor student, man, that stuff's 20 years old. It's as simple as that. I'm saying 20, but it could be 5 years old if it's really modern, you know. And we need to actually get, and I'm talking to the attendees here and panelists, if there's something that you are doing and you're willing to share that with the broader community, we are more than willing to help you design a paper, do the research on it, get the academic research behind it, and actually implement it. Because I think the youth is doing it. They're just not writing it down. And that's the sad part. Yeah. Okay, and I'll leave it at that. I'm over to you, Victor.
Thanks very much, Prof. Renee, I'm going to get back to you. You come from a manned aviation industry and coming into this space. And what are the differences? I mean, I'm sure we know what's happening to the manned aviation industry, which has been decimated by COVID-19. Where do you see that industry going, vis-a-vis in comparison to this industry? And whilst you edit, Renee, can you also talk about different payloads with respect to mining surveying, and you know, there's different kinds of maps, LiDAR cameras versus photogrammetry. Take us through these things, because I'm not a technical person as far as the drone industry is concerned. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Victor. So I think it is now an ideal topic to cover. The mere fact that we are working with disruptive technology, which in itself is called disruptive because it changes the way processes are carried out from an industrial application or from an industrial view, most especially to our topic specific today. From a manned aviation side, comparing a drone to a manned aircraft, of course, first thing that comes up is efficiency and safety. You take in obviously a fraction of a cost of operating a manned aircraft, for example, to do a mapping of an area or a survey, and you're applying a fraction of that cost to investing in drone technology that can accomplish the same function, maybe not in the same time, but more efficiently, especially when it comes to your multi-rotor drones. You can reach your means to the end now more efficiently than ever before, and safer than ever before as well. When it comes to the manned side, I think Thabo could also attest to that. We are seeing a dramatic increase in interest from personnel from manned aviation. In fact, for the past 2 months at our aviation training organization, we've had more manned applicants that have been going through the course than ever before. It's actually unprecedented. Of course, COVID has now amplified and accelerated that. But the fact of the matter is this disruptive technology is disrupting industries. What you could accomplish, with all due respect to, for example, with a helicopter previously, you can now do with a drone. So that is a virtual reality that a lot of the manned applications are suffering because a drone can do so much more than you would do traditionally, as in terms of covering ground, you as a person with a camera or any piece of device with which you are surveying or mapping, or as opposed to manned aviation. The drone it's a much needed tool.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thabo, over to you. I think as a young Black drone technology person going into an environment, I know the mining industry. I mean, I was educated by Anglo-American, and I know how conservative that industry can be. What type of challenges have you had, and what type of message would you have to some of the young Black pilots out there who are considering this industry? Because there is a need for talent to get into this industry. You are muted.
Thank you, Chair. I think the challenges, Victor, in our operations, 90% of our staff is locally, kids from around Ochis, Kriel, in the Witbank areas, where we've inducted them from just simple programs, from getting their licenses, getting them their RPLs, and engaging them on serious co-piloting programs. And just on the backlog of their backgrounds, it has been challenging from their side. But what we've implemented, like I always say, from a trust equation, and we teach them on the different aspects of how to be reliable, how to be credible, and the self-interest and the intimacy with the clients. So the challenges has been in just, we didn't grow up with technology from us, but through the speed up of regulations and support from other stakeholders, they've done really well. And I think it's opened opportunities from the local development side. They've seen it as a career path. The applicants are enormous from what we've done with the community. So it's been going well from our side. I did say from the year 2021, this will be a company where young Black guys and girls will stand out and in this industry.
Yeah, no, thanks, Thabo. We're just going to have the last round of you guys in no more than 60 seconds, just to, you don't have to talk about the mining industry, but just the drone industry. There are people who believe that South Africa is lagging behind, all because we are not talking about drone deliveries and passenger drones, and because that seems to be making more news. I mean, Amazon has been in the news more than companies like Precision Hawk, who are doing serious stuff in the industry. Chris, I'm just going to start with you. In terms of rate of adoption, you guys, you're not only in the mining space, you've moved into agriculture. Where do you see this industry? We've built this as the decade of the drone, but where do you see this industry at the end of this decade?
Yeah, thanks, Victor. I think the end of this decade is going to be about sustainability, right? So again, you're seeing mining companies like in places like Australia now becoming, Glencore, which would dig coal out, is now also suddenly distributing seeds and crops, right? You're seeing British Petroleum, BP, all of a sudden saying, by the end of the decade, they're not going to be an oil company, they're going to be a renewable energy company. So it's really about how do you adapt and how do you really position your company for that sustainability by the end of the decade. And that's what we're seeing as well. It's really about understanding that mining has been an incredible cornerstone of the South African economy, but also we've all got to be realistic and also look at what's going to be the sustainable business in the 10 years to come. Thank you, Victor.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Ruben, where do you see, the mining industry is battling with issues of sustainability, but how do you see the drone industry maybe either changing the tide of the problems that we're experiencing, But where do you see this industry, drone industry, within the mining industry in the next 10 years?
Victor, if I can say, I think one of the biggest fears, I think at this point in time, that is in the industry at this point in time is the mechanization idea. The idea that mines are going to move in the direction of mechanization and things like that, and which is a bit counterproductive to labor and things like that. But I think drones will bring the idea of transparency and monitoring, as well as risk management, as well as volume and quantification and stuff. And it will, as the Prof was saying earlier, one of the most difficult things that is in the mining industry is that the big mining houses are not that positive to share information. So what will happen is I think the droning operations and droning industry is going to open up much more transparency, and data will be readily available and more at the beck and call of the authorities and that type of thing to start legislating. Because
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a very good constitution and the acts are amazing in this country. But the thing is, it's not as, it is as good as enforcement and monitoring and quantification and things like that. So I think drones is going to bring technology to the table that will be able to respond and provide data, you know, to a much wider platform, which will actually bring a collaboration, I think, between the many houses as well as government and things like that. And it's inevitable that as we see, the social platforms have opened up, you know, a lot of things in the social media, where I think drones will bring information much more readily, I think, to the table of the mineral industry and that type of thing, and it's going to become much more open platform. So we will only hope that that information then will bring better decisions for the future.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Ruben. Prof, in the bigger scheme of things, in surveying, town planning, the people that you're producing now, do you think there's probably going to be a need to educate them on some of these tools like drone technology? Is it going to be necessary with future graduates?
Thank you, Victor. Of course, it's very important to teach the guys about the new technology. I think this COVID pandemic has taught us a lot about operating differently, sharing data differently, communicating differently. And the information that can be acquired by drones will definitely lead to that. I think one of the pitfalls is not to try and educate based on what we now know about drones, but the challenge is to educate based on what drones can add within the next 10 or 15 years, even 5 years from now, because of the amount of technology and knowledge that's building this body of knowledge for drones. If you start Googling things on drones, you find a myriad of research papers and things. But I feel it's really important to be flexible enough in our training of students to understand the fundamentals, and whatever the drone then brings to the party, that they can deal with that. 2 years ago, even a year ago, putting a LiDAR system on a drone would have been unthinkable. Now people are thinking about it because the payload can be carried, but now the challenge is still, are you willing to put a 1 million rand payload on a 60,000 rand drone and trust it to a guy that did a 15,000 rand UAV course? No, that's a risk that you need to take. But hopefully drones and multispectral sensors will come cheaper, faster, smaller, more efficient. And in that case, it's the way to go. And it goes back to what Christopher said about the Prometheus movie. You know, if we see what happens in science fiction versus what is our dream, we should be able to develop something. But the main thing is not to bog down on what we see now. We need to look into the future. Otherwise, you can't drive forward if you look in the rearview mirror the whole time. So we need to give the guys a fundamental understanding of what technology can bring. But we also need to understand where this technology can end up. And in Africa, I feel once again, if we can use drones to deliver COVID medicine or COVID tests, medicine, water, whatever supplies, as well as information as far as drought and community development is concerned, we're doing the right things. And that's unfortunately what I said. I'm not seeing that as much in South Africa as I'm seeing in Rwanda or Zambia or Tanzania or Malawi for that. And
Yeah.
there's a huge opportunity. Let's say that there's still a huge opportunity for that, but we need the input from government for that. Thank you, Victor. Back to you.
Thank you. Last one, you young men, age has spoken. Now it's just last to the two of you, because you guys are the future of this industry. But I'm just going to give you one question on for you guys to vote on in the last just in 30 seconds. F-frame, payload, and software. Which do you think is going to be important in the run-up to 2030? Starting with you, Renee, just vote. F-frame, software, and payload.
Sure, it's a tough one because all of those can be improved. Payload.
Payload, okay.
Yeah.
Abo?
I would say software.
I'm glad you guys are disagreeing. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And I'm glad Mr. Simon Zwane, I said last at the end, we're just going to make a quick announcement. In next month's webinar in October, we want to talk about a completely different subject, which is the airspace. We've had discussions with ATNS on matters relating to controlled and uncontrolled airspace. And we know that the people who want to go into drone deliveries, they're going in full force. But one thing that they're missing out is that the airspace is far more complicated than what we know on the road. Amazon might know, Uber might know what's happening on the road, but in the airspace, things are highly complicated. We hope to have ATNS next month, and we hope to have Mr. Tabansu from CAA. We hope to have you guys, because we just want to talk about the issue of uncontrolled airspace, because we've got national key points like ports, and the airspace above those national key points is sometimes not protected. We've got prisons and all of those. Those are the issues that we're going to talk to in our next month's webinar. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next month. And take care, socially distance. Remember, Thursday, do your Jerusalem dance challenge, and we hope to see you in October. God bless.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Victor. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Cheers.